agenda, but I was just notified from Seoul. There's a Professor David Valls-Gabaud, who is actually in Korea University at the moment, who's going to actually give us a lecture titled Towards the Nomination of Suul in UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. Professor Gabaud is a professor of Observatory of Paris. I think he's visiting from Paris.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor Gabaud.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, and it was just a coincidence that I was visiting Seoul this week when Professor Tambon Park mentioned the conference. So I'm going to give a few words, a few indications on possible nomination of Suul in the list of UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humankind. Because it is my belief, my strong belief after having tasted this beverage, that Suul could be the soul of Korea, playing with the words, or likely Suul could be the spirit of Korea. And those two concepts can actually be useful to get a nomination for UNESCO. So, as you know, UNESCO has a committee which decides annually the nominations that are proposed by nations, state parties. And this is a very old convention back in 2003, and they decide whether or not to qualify these nominations into the list. And if we have a look at this, we see a number of activities corresponding to the cultural heritage in Korea that goes all the way from the Lantern Festival to Korean wrestling, Jeju Angyo, a number of rituals and games. I mean, almost every year there's been a fraction of this cultural heritage from Korea that went into UNESCO's list. And, you know, even it goes back all the way to perhaps 2008, if you look at the webpage of UNESCO. And I was very surprised not to find Suul in this list. And for instance, and really something quite easy, and I'm going to spend a few steps where perhaps we can propose Suul to UNESCO. But this is yet another example of cultural activity that went into UNESCO's list. And there's some reasons for this. There is a nomination form. There is a document that explains why this particular item of cultural heritage should go into the list. So most of these activities are related to the cultural heritage of Korea, but none of them is related to alcoholic beverages. In fact, if you look at the list of wines and alcohols that went into the UNESCO list, you see the beer culture that was mentioned before in Belgium. You have a festival in Vevey in Switzerland. You have the traditional way of winemaking in Georgia. And of course, I cannot miss saying the French cultural way of making meals and the alcohol that went with that. So there is no reason why Suul cannot be in that list. And just last week, we learned that a region in the northern area of Spain, Asturias, is presenting to this list for 2022 the traditional cider making process to UNESCO. And it turns out I know this region quite well, and this movie is going to show how the process goes. So you can see here, taking the bottle of cider and letting the liquid go into the glass. And this is a key gesture you see, you have to break the molecules so that the gas can be kept, and you have to drink it just after this. And so just the process of actually pouring from something like 1.5 meters onto the glass, that's the intangible heritage that this region of Spain is proposing to UNESCO. It takes quite a dexterity for this, and you're going to miss part of the liquid out, but also this is part also of the tradition. So besides being funny and so on, this is something that has been going on for at least 3 centuries. And so I really think that there is no reason why Suul cannot get into the list if this traditional cider making process gets into the list. So I would suggest there will be essentially 4 steps for preparing this document for UNESCO. The first is actually to make a campaign to promote this traditional way of making wine in Korea. And that's why I think finding a slogan, perhaps with some advertisement company, but saying Suul is a soul of Korea, plays extremely well. Or likewise, Suul is the spirit of Korea, goes also very well. And probably these companies will find something more clever, but playing with words is always very important. The second step, of course, is to use the experience that other nominees have got. So discussing with the other groups that went into the UNESCO list will be extremely useful to actually produce step number 3, which is preparing the nomination document to be presented first to the Korean Ministry of Culture, and then in the 4th step, lobbying towards the UNESCO committee and the national delegations. So those are 4 easy steps that I think can be made, trying to get the nomination of Suul into the UNESCO list. And with this, I would just wish you very good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Gabaud. That was not on the list, and it was really wonderful. I would love to get those names so we can start the lobbying process. And, I have, let's see, we on the schedule we have the break time, but I think we're going to have to go on because we are a little bit past our planned time. So next we're going to invite Professor Son Seok-ju from Donga University, and he's going to deliver a talk titled History of Alcohol Consumption in Mythical and Colonial India. Please welcome.